Welcome everyone. Today is going to be the first of a series of reviews I'm doing on bourbons that are going to be between 10 and 12 years old. So these are all pretty quality bourbons from what I've heard. I'm excited because I've not had most of these before, including the one that we're going to be trying tonight. And I thought to kick things off, we can go with a modern development from a classic bourbon. And what we're talking about today is Russell's Reserve 10-year-old bourbon whiskey. Russell's Reserve is a new brand developed by Wild Turkey, by Jimmy and Eddie Russell, the master distillers at Wild Turkey. Jimmy Russell, I believe, I get him confused sometimes. He is the elder of the two. He's the father of Eddie, and he has been master distiller at Wild Turkey for decades. And I think Eddie was more recently named master distiller as well, sometime since the year 2000, and he's been working at Wild Turkey pretty much his whole life as far as I know. And within the past, I think 15-ish years, Eddie developed this brand for him and Jimmy to be like a symbol of their union or their father-son relationship, being kind of a unique thing in bourbon. And my understanding is this is really just a premium brand of Wild Turkey. That's kind of how it's perceived. And it's aged for 10 years, the specific bottle. All the Russell's Reserve bottles, because there are a few of them, they are aged in number 4 alligator char barrels. So the highest, I believe, char level for bourbon means it's the longest amount of time that the inside of the barrel is charred before bourbon goes in, or before the unaged spirit goes into it. I think it's for like 55 seconds or something like that. It's 45%, 10 years old, as I said, so it'd make it 90 proof and 10 years old. And supposedly, according to Russell's Reserve themselves, Eddie and Jimmy, they pick kind of the finer barrels, the sweet spot barrels that are usually from the middle of the warehouse, according to the website. So, you know, I don't know how much of that is marketing, how much of that is true, but supposedly this is supposed to be a higher end Wild Turkey. And I mean, Wild Turkey's pretty good stuff. I like it a lot, but it gets kind of a bad rap, I think, from folks who aren't as familiar with whiskey, that don't know, oh, Wild Turkey's actually pretty good. So my guess is this was a brand created to kind of be like a more premium version of it with a little bit of distance from the Wild Turkey name maybe, but who knows. Let's try it, see if it's good stuff. Give a little bit of a spin to it, nothing too crazy, just to try to get a little bit of air to it, so I don't get too much of the neck pour effect, so I can see what this thing's really all about. Because I know that different bourbons for me, for different distilleries, they end up changing as they age more. I don't think Wild Turkey and Russell's is one that, in my opinion, really changes a whole lot as it ages, but you never know. Okay. So it's kind of light. I wouldn't guess this would be a super aged bourbon just from looking at it, or maybe not even 10 years. Okay, on the nose. Screams Wild Turkey right away. It's almost like it reminds me of the Wild Turkey 101, but with the edges rounded out a little bit more. I can pick up on the wood. I don't know that I pick up on a whole lot of the wood influence from the extra aging. But it is there. It's like sweetened baking spices is what I get on the nose. Some cinnamon. I think cinnamon's a pretty common note that people get from Wild Turkey. I'm definitely getting it from this. Almost like a hint of like a bubblegummy flavor there too, or some kind of sweetness there on the nose. All right, let's give it a taste. Very different on the palate than it was on the nose. Starts off on the front palate for that first sip as being, the first thing I noticed was just how thin it was. Just tasted really, really thin. It says 90 proof, so I guess it wouldn't be as hard hitting, maybe even as viscous as Wild Turkey 101, but it was thin. Then I got this weird funk, can't really describe it, some kind of weird wood funk. And then I had that sweet, almost like bubblegummy sort of flavor on the back palate. And the finish is there. It's not very strong, but it's there. All right, let's give it another sip. Second sip, very similar experience to the first. It was thin again on the front. That weird funk hit in the mid palate again, which almost had like a staleness to it or something like that. It's not my favorite, how it hit on the mid palate. And then on the back palate, this time I got a little bit more of that baking spice again, that cinnamon, but there still is a little bit of that sweet, almost bubblegummy note. And I've never heard of any Wild Turkey product having that kind of sweetness. So that's just how it's hitting me right now. Everything about that sip is good, except the mid palate's off-putting to me. It's almost like if I'm going to be really, I guess, stingy or critical about it, it's almost like a stale cardboard note that hits in the mid palate, but everything around it is good, apart from it being a little bit thin too. The flavor that you get on the front palate, it's fleeting, but it's good. You get that initial Wild Turkey flavor, then into that mid palate that I don't like, and then more of that classic Wild Turkey sort of cinnamon plus with that sweetness comes on the end and lingers a little bit in the finish too. It's more of that classic baking spice cinnamon that lingers on the finish and the sweetness that you get on the back palate. The more of this I drink, the less of that stale note on the mid palate I get, and more of the quicker development into those baking spices, that cinnamon with that touch of sweetness. It transitions more quickly from the front palate just directly into that instead of having that stale note. So that might have been like a weird neck pour issue. Heck, maybe there's like a bad cork in here or something. It looks all right. I don't know, but hopefully as this bottle ages a bit, that'll go away. I won't have it anymore. I like it. I don't know that I love it. So around here, you can get this at most places for about $40 before tax. And all I keep thinking about is how this stands up to Wild Turkey 101. And Wild Turkey 101, there are a couple stores around here you can get for $22 before tax. Pretty ridiculous. So this is almost double the price of Wild Turkey 101. And I might even like Wild Turkey 101 better. Not really sure about that, but I might. It's certainly close enough that I wouldn't opt for this over 101, although I do like this. 101 just might be the best value in bourbon, so maybe it's unfair for me to compare it to, but I think I would lean that way. So Russell's Reserve, 10 years old. What would I give this? If we're talking about quality alone, on a 1 to 10 scale, maybe I'd give this a 7.2 right now. If we're talking about value, packaging, marketing, the whole experience, everything, all things considered, $40, 90 proof. I'd probably give this a B minus, C plus, something like that. B minus will go, because I do like it and I think it is going to age better. So maybe it'll get up to a B as well as more air gets to the bottle and I get past that stale note. That's what I think. Curious to see what you think though. If you have a different opinion, leave a comment, let me know what you think. Let me know if you pick up on different notes than I do. If you get that stale cardboard note in the mid palate or something else. I know a lot of folks get like a nuttiness off of this. I don't get that, but maybe that's how I'm interpreting that kind of stale note in the middle. I don't know. And certainly want to hear if you get that sweet bubblegummy note that really threw me for a loop on this one. Curious about that. Cheers, everyone.